All right, so, everyone's talking about India's big infrastructure push, right?
Yeah.
Roads, rails, the whole nine
Yeah,
yards.
it's huge.
But what if I told you the next big thing might be happening on the water? Like self-driving cargo barges, cruising up and down India's rivers and canals.
So that's an interesting thought.
Seriously, autonomous barges in India. That's what we're diving into today. We've got this article, analyzes the feasibility of this whole thing, even lays out proposed routes and real-world case studies. Pretty cool, huh?
Yeah, it's a fascinating concept for sure.
So, okay, let's get real. India's logistics sector, it's always had its struggles, right? Costs, speed, the whole shebang.
Definitely a lot of challenges.
But could these autonomous barges be like the magic bullet everyone's been waiting for?
Yeah.
That's the big question, isn't it?
That's the million-dollar question, yeah.
Right.
Can this tech actually deliver, make a real difference in a place like India? And how does it stack up against what other countries are doing?
Right, exactly. So much to unpack. First things first, let's set the scene. India's economy is booming, but getting stuff from one place to another, it's a nightmare sometimes, am I right?
You're telling me.
What are some of the biggest roadblocks they're facing?
Well, think about this. India's logistics costs are estimated to be something like 14% of its GDP.
Whoa, that's a lot.
It is. And it's way higher than in a lot of developed countries. This inefficiency, it hits everyone, businesses, consumers. Ultimately, it slows down economic growth.
So time is money, literally.
Exactly.
And that's where these self-driving barges come in.
Right. Think about it. Barges working 20/47. No human schedules, no limitations, navigating perfectly. Lower costs, faster deliveries, and maybe even a smaller carbon footprint than all those trucks on the road.
It almost sounds too good to be true.
I know, right?
This article, it breaks down the potential benefits into four main categories.
Yeah.
Cost reduction, speed improvement, environmental impact, and then improved safety and reliability. Let's start with cost. Realistically, how much could India actually save by switching to autonomous barges?
I mean, the potential's there, but it's not just like flipping a switch and everything's cheaper.
Right, it's got to be more complicated than that.
You do eliminate the crew, which is a big chunk of the cost. And these barges, they're designed to be super fuel efficient, like a self-driving car figuring out the best route and speed to save gas. But the upfront investment, that's hefty. Developing the navigation systems, the sensors, the communication infrastructure, it all adds up.
So it's a long game. But are the potential savings big enough to make it worth it? This article mentions some pretty impressive numbers.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Look at the Jal Marg Vikas Pariyojana project, or JMVP for short. They're developing National Waterway 1. It's massive, like over 1,620 kilometers between Varanasi and Haldia.
That's ambitious.
It is. And they're incorporating autonomous barge technology as a key part of it. The interesting thing is they're not just automating what they're already doing, they're changing the whole system. Dredging the channel, for example, makes it deeper and wider so barges can carry more and move more efficiently. That all translates to cost savings.
So it's not just the tech on the barge itself, it's optimizing the whole infrastructure around it.
Exactly. And their projections are pretty wild, up to a 30% reduction in costs compared to traditional shipping.
Wow, 30%.
Of course, got to see if it actually works out that way, but it definitely paints an interesting picture.
Definitely something to keep an eye on. Okay, then there's the Sagarmala Programme, this massive initiative to boost all of India's shipping, coastal and inland. Are autonomous barges part of that too?
Absolutely. Sagarmala is all about modernizing ports and waterways, laying the foundation for this tech revolution, you could say. They're projecting something like a 15% cost reduction and a 20% speed increase. If that happens, it's a game changer for a lot of industries.
It's like India's going all in on this autonomous barge thing.
Yeah, it seems that way.
But before we get too carried away, are there any examples of this actually working somewhere else? Like real-world proof that India can learn from?
There are some really interesting examples. The port of Antwerp in Belgium comes to mind. They've been using autonomous barges for a while now, and the results are pretty impressive, like a 20% cost reduction and 15% faster shipping times.
Wow, 20% cost reduction. That's huge. So what can India learn from what Antwerp's doing? Any mistakes they should avoid?
One of the biggest things is collaboration. The Antwerp project involved everyone, the port authority, tech companies, shipping companies, all working together really closely. That kind of teamwork is key to making sure everything runs smoothly.
So it's not just about the tech, it's about getting everyone on the same page.
Exactly.
But what about the technology itself? What makes these autonomous barges possible? Is it like super advanced AI, crazy sensors, all that?
It's a mix of everything. GPS, radar, LiDAR, cameras, all working together to create this incredibly detailed picture of the waterway and everything around it. And then you have the AI, the brains of the operation, processing all that data in real time to make navigation decisions, avoiding obstacles, adjusting speed, finding the most efficient route. It's
That's
all happening automatically.
So it's more than just a barge on autopilot. It's this whole intricate system.
Exactly.
And I imagine one of the big challenges is making sure all of that is, like, super reliable. I mean, we're talking about big ships carrying valuable stuff. Safety is paramount. And then there's cybersecurity too, right? I mean, people hacking into barges sounds like something out of a movie, but it's a real concern, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, it's a very real concern. And it's not just about mischief, it could have huge economic and safety implications. Imagine a barge full of, like, crucial medical supplies being delayed or rerouted because of a cyber attack. The consequences could be disastrous.
So the stakes are incredibly high. It's not just about efficiency, it's about national, even global security. So they're spending a lot of time and money making these systems as secure as possible, right?
Yeah, tons of research and development going into it. We're talking multiple layers of protection, redundancy built into the systems, constant monitoring to catch any potential threats. It's a constant race to stay ahead of the bad guys, just like in any other area of cybersecurity.
Okay, but let's shift gears for a second and talk about jobs. Whenever we talk about automation, there's this fear of people losing their livelihoods. Is that a valid concern here?
It's definitely a legitimate concern, and it's something we need to address head on.
Right.
Yes, the shift to autonomous barges could displace some workers who are currently doing those jobs, but it's not as simple as just machines replacing humans.
There's more nuance than that.
Way more nuance. As this technology develops, it's going to create new jobs in areas like software development, data analysis, system maintenance, cybersecurity, you name it. The skills needed will change, but it doesn't necessarily mean jobs will just disappear.
So it's more about adapting, right?
Yeah.
The workforce needing to adapt.
Exactly. And that means investing in training and education, making sure people have the skills they need to thrive in this new world. It's a challenge, but it's also an opportunity to create a more skilled and competitive workforce.
That's a really important point. Okay, speaking of the future, let's talk about those proposed routes for autonomous barges in India. This article maps out 10 potential routes crisscrossing the entire country. It's pretty ambitious, to say the least.
It is ambitious, but it also shows you the incredible potential of India's inland waterway network. Imagine goods flowing smoothly from like Assam all the way to Kerala, connecting major industrial centers, agricultural regions, ports, everything. It could completely change how goods are moved within the country.
Okay, let's zoom in on a couple of those routes. One that caught my eye is the one along National Waterway 1, connecting Prayagraj to Haldia. It's over 1,600 kilometers long, spans like a bunch of different states. What makes that route so strategically important?
Well, that route connects the heartland of India, a region that's super rich in agriculture and industry, to the eastern coast. So it opens up access to international markets. It has the potential to really boost economic growth in all those states it passes through. Makes it easier and cheaper for businesses to transport their goods, both within India and internationally.
So it's about connecting economies, not just cities.
Exactly. And it's not just about big businesses either. Think about all the small farmers in that region. They often struggle to get their produce to market. With easier and cheaper transportation options, they can reach more customers and get better prices for their goods.
It's amazing how something like an autonomous barge can have such a ripple effect.
It really is.
Okay, another one that seems interesting is National Waterway 2 in Assam. It goes from Sadia to Dhubri, over 890 kilometers, through a region that's full of natural resources and agricultural products. What's the potential there?
That route has the potential to unlock the economic power of a region that's often been held back by, poor connectivity. It could be a game changer for the people and businesses in that area.
It's like these waterways could breathe new life into entire regions.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting to think about.
But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Before we declare autonomous barges the solution to all of India's logistics problems, we need to acknowledge that there are potential downsides, right? Challenges that they'll need to overcome.
Oh, absolutely. Every innovation comes with its own set of complexities. Autonomous barges are no different. We need to look at this technology with a critical eye and understand both the good and the bad.
So let's talk about the bad. What could go wrong? What are some of the potential downsides?
Well, one of the first things is regulations. Implementing autonomous navigation requires clear rules and safety standards, and developing those takes time. There's a lot of bureaucracy to navigate.
Red tape, as always.
Exactly. But it's important to get it right. These regulations have to cover everything from safety protocols to who's liable if something goes wrong to how data is protected. It's a complicated puzzle, and it takes time to put all the pieces together.
And then there's the whole infrastructure thing. We talked about dredging and widening channels, but what about other needs? Like, do they need to build new ports, upgrade existing ones?
You're exactly right. It's not just about the waterways, it's about everything surrounding them. We need modern terminals that can handle the cargo from these autonomous barges. We need efficient logistics systems to coordinate the movement of goods. And we need reliable communication infrastructure to make sure data can flow seamlessly.
It's like a massive undertaking.
It is a significant undertaking, but it's also an investment in the future. A modern, efficient logistics network is essential for any country that wants to compete globally. And for India, with their goal of becoming a major manufacturing hub, this kind of investment is crucial.
So it's not just about moving goods around. It's about positioning India as a key player in the global supply chain.
Precisely.
Okay, we talked about cybersecurity earlier, but I want to dig a little deeper into that. What are some of the specific measures they're taking to protect these barges from cyber attacks? What kind of safeguards are in place?
It's a great question, and it's something that's being taken very seriously. We're talking about multiple layers of protection. You've got strong firewalls and intrusion detection systems to prevent unauthorized access to the barge's control systems. Then you have encryption technologies to protect the data being transmitted between the barge and the shore.
So it's like building a fortress around the barge's critical systems.
Exactly. And it's not just about preventing attacks, it's also about being able to detect and respond to them quickly. That's where real-time monitoring comes in. Security teams are constantly watching the barge's systems for any suspicious activity, and they have protocols in place to respond quickly and effectively if an attack is detected.
It's like a constant game of cat and mouse between the security teams and the hackers.
It is. And as technology advances, so do the methods used by cybercriminals. That's why it's so important to stay ahead of the curve, to constantly update security measures to counter new threats.
So it's a never-ending battle, but it's one they have to win.
Absolutely. The potential consequences of a successful cyber attack on an autonomous barge are just too high to ignore.
Okay, let's take a step back for a moment. We've covered a lot of ground here. The nuts and bolts of how these barges work, the potential economic impact, the crucial role of cybersecurity. It's a lot to process.
Yeah, it's a lot.
But it's also incredibly fascinating.
It is. We're talking about a technology that has the potential to revolutionize the way we transport goods, not just in India, but globally. And we've only just scratched the surface. There's so much more to explore, so many more questions to ask.
And that's exactly what we're going to do in the next part of our deep dive. We'll look at the global context, talk about some of the ethical considerations, and discuss what this all means for the future of the shipping industry as a whole.
It really is a whole new world out there, you know? But before we get too lost in the Indian waterways, let's zoom out a bit. Look at the bigger picture.
Yeah, good idea. We talked about the port of Antwerp, but what else is happening around the world with autonomous shipping? Any other examples that might be relevant to what India is trying to do?
Oh, definitely. There's Norway, for example.
Right.
They're known for their maritime expertise, right?
Okay.
Well, they've been doing some really cool stuff with autonomous electric ferries.
Electric ferries, that sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, they're using them for like short distance passenger transport. The focus is on sustainability, battery power, no emissions, less noise pollution.
That's awesome, but how does that translate to cargo transport? I mean, that's a whole different ballgame, right?
Right, much bigger scale. And that's where the Netherlands comes in. They're testing autonomous barges for inland container transport, very similar to what India is envisioning. Their approach is interesting because they're really focused on integrating these barges into existing logistics networks, working with companies like DHL to create a smooth flow of goods.
So it's not just about the tech itself, it's about how it fits into the whole system.
Exactly.
Collaboration seemed to be a recurring theme here.
For sure. Oh, and another one worth mentioning is Singapore. Global hub for shipping, right? They're testing autonomous tugboats to guide larger ships in and out of port.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's a job that requires incredible precision, and they're using autonomous tech to make it even more efficient and safe.
So a lot of these initiatives are still in the experimental phase, right? Any countries out there that have already gone all in on autonomous shipping? like commercially.
Not fully, but China is making some serious moves. They're pouring tons of money into autonomous cargo ships. They've already launched a bunch of vessels that can operate without a crew.
Well, no crew at all.
Their goal is to be the global leader in this technology, and they're definitely putting their money where their mouth is.
Well, China's always a force to be reckoned with when it comes to tech. But their approach often raises concerns about, like, data privacy and security. Are those concerns justified in the context of autonomous shipping?
Oh, absolutely. And it's not just about China. It applies to any country developing this kind of technology. Autonomous ships generate massive amounts of data, their routes, what they're carrying, how they're operating. Protecting that data from cyber attacks and making sure it's not misused, that's absolutely critical.
So it's not just about the technology itself, it's about the ethics of how that technology is used.
Exactly. And that brings up a bigger point. As we're moving into this uncharted territory of autonomous shipping, we need to be really mindful of the ethical implications. It's not just about efficiency and saving money. It's about making sure things are fair, transparent, and accountable.
What are some of the ethical dilemmas we should be thinking about? Where are the potential pitfalls?
While job displacement is a big one, as we talked about earlier, the shift to autonomous shipping could mean fewer jobs for people who traditionally work in the maritime industry. It's really important to think about the social impact and come up with strategies to, minimize job losses and create new opportunities.
Right. Finding that balance, getting the benefits of the technology without leaving people behind.
Exactly. And then there's the whole issue of liability. If an autonomous ship has an accident, who's responsible? Is it the ship owner, the company that made the technology, the people who wrote the software? These are complicated legal questions that need to be figured out before we see widespread adoption of autonomous shipping.
It sounds like we're entering a whole new legal and ethical gray area. Like, the old rules might not apply anymore.
You're exactly right. We need to update our laws and regulations to keep up with technology. And it's not just about individual countries doing their own thing. We need international cooperation to create global standards and norms for autonomous shipping.
So it's a global challenge that needs a global solution. Okay, let's bring it back to India for a second. Given all these ethical considerations, do you think India is approaching this technology responsibly? Are they doing what they need to do to minimize the risks?
From what I've seen, India seems to be taking a pretty cautious approach, which is good. They're focusing on pilot projects, testing the waters before diving in headfirst. And they're talking to a lot of different people, industry experts, academics, policymakers, to develop a solid framework for autonomous shipping.
So it's not just a rush to adopt the latest shiny new toy. It's more measured and thoughtful.
Yeah, I think so. They're learning from what other countries are doing, both the successes and the failures. They're trying to create a roadmap that takes advantage of the opportunities but also addresses the challenges.
It's a balancing act for sure, but the potential payoff is huge. If India can pull this off, the benefits could be incredible, not just for their economy, but for their standing in the world.
Oh, absolutely. Imagine India, a country with such a rich maritime history, becoming a leader in this new age of autonomous shipping. It would really solidify their position as a technological powerhouse.
It's a bold vision and definitely something to strive for. But as we've been talking about, it's not going to be easy. It requires a lot of careful planning, a willingness to work with others, and a commitment to doing things the right way, ethically.
Well said. And it's a journey that's going to require constant adaptation and innovation. The technology is changing all the time, and the rules of the game are constantly evolving. To succeed, India needs to be flexible and willing to adjust course as needed.
So it's not just about setting a plan in motion and hoping for the best. It's about constantly checking in, making adjustments, staying ahead of the curve.
Exactly. And it's about fostering a culture of innovation where people aren't afraid to try new things, where failure is seen as a learning opportunity, and where collaboration is encouraged.
It sounds like a lot of work, but also a really exciting time to be involved in the world of shipping. Like, we're witnessing a major shift, a transformation that could change global trade forever.
It really is a transformative moment. And it's fascinating to watch how India is positioning itself to be a major player in all of this. What they do, whether they succeed or fail, it's going to have ripple effects far beyond their borders.
So what are some of the key things that will determine whether India succeeds? What do they need to get right to make the most of this opportunity?
Well, several things are going to be crucial. First and foremost, they need to keep investing in infrastructure. like we talked about, modernizing ports, making waterways deeper and wider, building a reliable communication network. All of that is essential.
So it's about building the foundation, making sure the basic elements are in place.
Exactly. And it's not just about physical infrastructure, it's about digital infrastructure too. India needs to make sure they have the technological know-how, the data analytics expertise, the cybersecurity defenses to support the complex operations of autonomous shipping.
It's a multi-pronged approach for sure. What about regulations? We talked about the need for clear rules, but what specific things should India be doing on that front?
They need to establish clear safety standards for these autonomous vessels. You know, how to prevent collisions, how to navigate in bad weather, what to do in emergencies. They need to figure out who's liable if something goes wrong. And they need to address data privacy concerns, making sure that all the data generated by these ships is protected and used responsibly.
So it's about finding that balance, encouraging innovation while also protecting people and their data.
Exactly. It's about finding that sweet spot where technology can flourish without compromising safety, security, or ethics.
And what about collaboration? We've talked about how important it is for different groups to work together. How can India encourage more of that between businesses, tech companies, and government agencies?
Creating opportunities for dialogue is really important. Industry conferences, workshops, research collaborations, those kinds of things can bring people from different areas together to share ideas, identify challenges, and come up with solutions.
So it's about breaking down silos, getting everyone talking to each other.
Exactly. And it's about learning from what other countries are doing. India can benefit a lot from studying the successes and failures of autonomous shipping initiatives around the world, figure out what works, what doesn't, and adapt those lessons to their own situation.
It's about being a fast learner, using the experience of others to their advantage.
That's a good way to put it. And it's about being agile, being able to adapt quickly. This technology is changing rapidly, and the regulatory landscape is shifting all the time. To succeed, India needs to be nimble and responsive.
So it's not a set it and forget it kind of thing. It's about constant monitoring, evaluation, and adjustment.
Exactly. And it's about embracing a culture of innovation where people aren't afraid to experiment, where failures are seen as opportunities to learn, and where collaboration is the norm.
It sounds like a tall order, but it also sounds like a really incredible opportunity. If India can get this right, they could not only catch up with the rest of the world, but actually surpass them and become a true leader in this field.
And that leadership could go beyond just technology. Imagine India becoming a global thought leader on the ethical and regulatory aspects of autonomous shipping, setting the standards for everyone else. That would be a huge accomplishment.
It's a bold vision, but it's definitely within reach. India has the talent, the resources, and the ambition to make it happen. But it's going to take a lot of hard work, smart planning, and a willingness to embrace both the opportunities and the challenges that come with this technology.
Absolutely. And it's a journey that's just getting started. The next few years are going to be critical as India navigates this complex and rapidly evolving landscape. The decisions they make now will have a huge impact on their economy, their role in global trade, and their position as a technological powerhouse.
It's a story that's still being written, and I'm really curious to see how it unfolds. But for now, let's take a quick break and come back refreshed to explore the final chapter of our deep dive. All right, so we've talked about how these autonomous barges work, the potential upside, the challenges, all that stuff. In India, around the world. But what really gets me is, like, the ripple effect. This isn't just about shipping, right?
No, not at all.
It's bigger than that.
Way bigger. It could change global trade patterns, create new economic hotspots, even change how we think about sustainability in the shipping industry.
Okay, let's break it down. How could autonomous barges actually reshape global trade? You know, supply chains are already changing, countries are competing, consumers want things faster and cheaper. How do these barges fit into all of that?
Imagine, right? Goods moving across continents, easier and cheaper than ever before. Autonomous barges could open up new trade routes, especially along rivers and canals that haven't been used much for shipping. And that could be a game changer for countries that haven't traditionally been big players in global trade. Gives them access to new markets, new opportunities.
So it's not just about efficiency, it's about leveling the playing field, giving more countries a chance to participate, especially developing countries, right?
Exactly. And it's not just about countries, it's about regions within countries, too. Think about remote areas, places that have been kind of cut off because they don't have good infrastructure. Autonomous barges could connect them to the rest of the world, give them a way to participate in the global economy.
That's a really cool thought. Like, this technology could literally bridge those gaps.
Yeah, it's pretty powerful stuff.
Okay, let's talk about the environmental impact for a second. We mentioned reduced emissions, but how big of a deal could that be globally?
I mean, the shipping industry is a huge polluter, right? So any tech that can reduce its carbon footprint is a win. Autonomous barges, because they're so efficient, they burn less fuel, create less waste. And as we shift to alternative fuels like hydrogen or electric power, those benefits get even bigger.
So it's not just about automating what we're already doing. It's about making the whole system more sustainable from the ground up.
Exactly. And it's not just about the barges themselves, it's about the whole logistics chain. Integrating these barges into a smarter system, you can optimize the movement of goods from start to finish. Fewer trips, less waiting around, maximum efficiency.
It's like this whole interconnected web working together to make things greener.
That's the idea, and it's gaining traction all over the world. As climate change becomes a bigger concern and people demand more sustainable products, the shipping industry is feeling the pressure to clean up its act. Autonomous barges could be a big part of the solution.
Okay, but are there any potential downsides we haven't talked about yet? I mean, we've discussed job displacement, but could this technology be misused or exploited in some way?
That's a really important question. Like any powerful technology, autonomous barges can be used for good or bad. In the wrong hands, they could be used for things like smuggling, trafficking, even terrorism.
So it's not just about the technology itself, it's about making sure it doesn't fall into the wrong hands.
Absolutely. We need strong security measures, both physical and cyber, to prevent unauthorized access to these vessels. We need clear international rules and agreements to govern their use. And we need constant vigilance to spot and respond to potential threats.
Sounds like a big job.
It is. But we can't afford to be complacent. The stakes are too high. We need to be proactive, think about the risks, and put safeguards in place.
So it's a shared responsibility, everyone working together to make sure this technology is used for the right reasons.
Exactly. Governments, businesses, tech developers, even the public, we all have a role to play in making sure this technology benefits humanity, not harms it.
It's a tightrope walk, for sure. Innovation on one side, responsibility on the other.
It is, but the potential benefits are huge. If we handle this transition right, embrace the opportunities and minimize the risks, autonomous barges could really make the world a better place.
It's an exciting possibility.
It really is. And it reminds us that technology is just a tool. We get to decide how we use it.
That's a good point. It's up to us to shape the future we want.
Exactly. And that's the main takeaway I hope people get from this discussion. Autonomous barges are more than just a cool new tech. They represent a turning point, a moment of choice. And that choice will affect everyone, not just the shipping industry, but the whole world.
It's a lot to think about, but it's also pretty empowering, you know?
It is. We have the power to guide this technology to make sure it leads to a positive outcome. But that means staying informed, engaging in these conversations, and being willing to grapple with the ethical questions.
So to wrap things up, what would you say to our listeners?
Keep learning, keep talking about this. And think about how you, in your own way, can help shape the future of autonomous shipping.
It's a call to action. We're not just spectators in this tech revolution. We're active participants.
The decisions we make today will determine what happens tomorrow.
In the next 10 years, things are going to change so fast.
Oh yeah, the shipping industry is in for a wild ride. Autonomous barges are just one part of it, but they're a big part. They show us where things are headed, a future where technology changes everything about how we move goods, connect with each other, and experience the world.
It's a future full of possibilities, but also challenges.
Definitely both. But it's a future we get to create.
So let's make it a good one. Let's embrace the good, manage the risks, and work together to build a future where technology makes life better for everyone.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
And that, my friend, brings us to the end of today's deep dive. It's been a long journey, but we've only just scratched the surface. Keep exploring, keep asking questions, and stay engaged. The future of shipping is in our hands.